Advisory Committee of January 16th to order. First item is roll call and introduction of the audience. And let's just go around the table. Commissioner, you want to start us off?
Sure.
Ed Taves, TPCC, MDT.
Don MacArthur, TPCC, Missoula Urban Transportation District.
John Engen, TPCC, City of Missoula.
Dave Strohmeyer, TPCC, Missoula County.
Jordan Hess, TPCC, City Council.
Corey Aldridge, TTAC, Missoula Urban Transportation District.
Lynn Hellegard, TTAC, Mr. TMA.
Ellen Buchanan, TTAC, Missoula Redevelopment Agency.
Shane Stack, TTAC, MDT.
Ben Weiss, TTAC, City of Missoula Bike Ped Office.
Mike Haynes, TTAC, City of Missoula.
John Wilson, TTAC, Missoula Public Works.
Dory Gramlow, TTAC for Missoula County. Sarah Bofield, TTAC,
Eric Dixon, proxy for Brent O'Connor, TTAC.
Lisa Moisey, TTAC, Missoula County.
Karen Hughes, proxy for Pat O'Haron, TTAC, Missoula County.
Okay, and audience members?
Aaron Wilson, Missoula NPO.
Sarah Osmer, Missoula NPO. Catherine Ajay, Missoula Ocean.
Warren Halstead, Missoula Airport. John Schick, HDR Engineering. Rod Austin, Missoula Parking. Bert Galwell. Nowhere.
All right. Thanks everyone for being here. We have minutes for TPCC from December 19th. I'd entertain a motion from TPCC members to approve those. And is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Mayor Engen and Commissioner Strohmeyer. Any discussion? Any public comment? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, no. All right, the minutes are approved. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? Ms. Morris, I understand you have a few items.
Just a couple of things. First of all, I wanted to let everyone know, if you haven't met our newest staff person, Kim Hutchison. She is over there with Logan. She joined us in December and will be taking over the TTAC and TPCC responsibilities here. So just want to welcome her. And I also just wanted to mention that we will be doing election of chair for TPCC, chair and vice chair for TPCC today. We'll wait to do TTAC at the TTAC meeting in February, but I just wanted to let you know that Dick Ainsworth, as you know, is no longer on the planning board, so the planning board will be bringing in a new person, appointing a new person at their meeting this month, and then that person will start in February. And then we also had Garen Smith, who is no longer on the health department board, and they will be appointing a new person as well.
Okay, thanks. Is there any additional public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our items of new business. So the first item is to elect a TPCC chair and vice chair for 2018. And I would entertain nominations for chair at this point. Commissioner Strohmeyer.
Mr. Hess has done a superb job this last year, so I would like to go ahead and nominate Jordan to continue as chair.
Okay, I appreciate that. I've enjoyed service, and I'd be happy to continue. Any additional nominations? Okay, seeing none, without objection, that I'll continue. And now for vice chair, Mr. Mayor.
I would nominate Commissioner Strohmeyer for vice chair.
Okay, any additional nominations? Okay, Dave, it's been a pleasure serving with you in this capacity, and I support that. Without objection, Commissioner Strohmeyer will serve as vice chair. Okay, seeing none. It is so. All right, we have a tip amendment number 2 for the 2018-2022 Transportation Improvement Program. Ms. Ostendorf.
All right, good afternoon. Tara Ostendorf, Transportation Planner, Missoula MPO. We're bringing forward Amendment 2 to the current 2018 TIP. Hopefully this should be a pretty brief item. It actually would have been an administrative mod, but we ended up adding a new funding category, so it's therefore an amendment. We have included both a memo and a list of the changes in your packet, so feel free to reference those as I kind of go through the presentation. Public notice was provided for about 4 weeks throughout December for the STIP amendment, so we're covered there with the Missoulian. And yeah, we'll kind of go through a host of smaller changes, but primarily it consists of a lot of funding shifts from one fiscal year to another and some minor cost updates. So without further ado, we'll start with STPU funds. Russell Street projects had some minor adjustments between the 3 phases of the project. There's an addition of approximately $500,000 of local funds. That should be acknowledged down in the adjustment column, which is right about here on the screen, if you can see where my pointer is, that negative number there. Moving on to interstate maintenance. Okay. Grant Creek Road and I-90, the construction funds were moved from 2019 to 2020. Reserve Street Interchange Project, the construction funds were moved from 2018 to 2019. No changes in the amounts there. And then the Van Buren Street Interchange, the project was actually moved to the new funding source, which is the National Highway Freight Program, which you'll see in a second here. Moving on to National Highway funds. Smudge Interchange, we added an RW phase in 2018 and moved some construction dollars from 2019 to 2021, no change in amounts there. 93 and Cartage Road, money was moved from 2018 to 2019 and increased by about $70,000. Navarro Hill moved from 2019 to 2018, as well as Whispering Pines. So this next one here is the new funding source. If I can find it. Did I skip that there? Did it come up on there? Here we go. Yep. So the project from Interstate Maintenance, the Van Buren Street Interchange, was just moved to this new funding category. All of our dollars are the same there. I don't know if there's any questions right off the bat with that guy.
I'll just add that the National Highway Freight Program category is a new category that was created under the FAST Act. It's not new money, it's just a new category that essentially says that states have to have this category and they have to program projects in this category. So again, it's not new dollars, but we just have to, the state has to show that projects are being completed that help the National Highway Freight Program. So hence moving the Van Buren Interchange project into this new category, it doesn't change any of the dollar amounts, just puts it in a new funding category.
So for HSIP funding, Highway Safety Improvement Program, the skid treatment project, money was moved in 2018 to 2019. Missoula Signal Safety Project, the costs were increased by approximately $30,000 in 2018. And the Lolo East Missoula Safety Improvement Project, money was moved from 2018 to 2019. No changes there in dollar amounts. Bridge program, Steel Bridge Rehab, they added $1.6 million in construction funds for 2020. And then finally, FTA section 5307. There was a $50,000 FTA transfer from the state in 2018. And so with that, that's kind of a quick overview. As you probably noticed, most of the funds were just state-managed federal funds or state funds that were adjusted. But our recommendation would be to approve amendment number 2 to the TIP. And with that, do we have any further questions?
Any questions? Or discussion, or I'd entertain a motion as well. Commissioner.
Yeah.
and I'm probably sitting next to the person who can answer it, but where's this, what is the steel bridge? Where is that? Where is it physically?
Where is it physically?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go ahead and answer that? Or?
I think it's
So-
multiple bridges.
Yeah, it's one of those projects that spans probably the district, that addresses the steel bridges and deficiencies in some of the steel bridges we have across the district. So I don't know specifically what bridge to point to or which number of bridges that are actually in the MPO.
Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion or a motion on the item?
I would move that we approve the tip amendment.
Okay, the motion is in order. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment on the Transportation Improvement Program amendment? Any additional committee comment? Okay, on the motion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, no? All right, the motion passes. So now we have an amendment number 1 to the Unified Planning Work Program.
Okay, one more item of business, and then we will move on to a couple of presentations, a few presentations. So in your packet, we have included a memo and a proposal that we received that I'll talk a little bit about. The UPWP amendment would be to the 2018, the current UPWP. It would be the first amendment. And what we're seeking to do is allocate $6,750 from the MPO's planning funds to do a, I'll call it kind of a mini strategic plan for Missoula in Motion and the Bike Ped program. So both of those programs are housed in the Transportation Division. I manage both of those programs as well as the MPO. And both of those programs are funded primarily through CMAQ federal funds. We are not allowed to use CMAQ funds for strategic planning type of things. Basically, the CMAQ guidelines that were updated in 2013 said that if something isn't leading to a particular discrete project or discrete program, then they do not allow us to use CMAQ funds to fund these types of things. So you couldn't do a study, and so therefore MDT has said that we couldn't do a strategic planning effort with those CMAQ funds. So what we're seeking to do is use PL funds, which are planning funds, to provide this mini strategic planning facilitated effort. And so the MPO has to go through every 5 or so years, MDT calls it a certification process, where they check to make sure that we're doing everything that we should be as far as complying with federal laws. There are no requirements for, similar requirements for that for CMAQ funded programs, but I feel that it's a good practice to do every once in a while. The Missoula in Motion did a strategic plan in 2006 with a consultant called Urban Planning Partners, and then more recently there was, as some of you probably recall, Nelson Nygaard did a study that looked at all of the TDM programs in Missoula. So they looked at what Missoula in Motion was doing, Bike Ped program, Mountain Line, Mr. TMA, and looked at all the different services that were being provided by those various entities and made some recommendations for each of those. And a lot of the things that were recommended in both of those strategic planning processes have been implemented in one form or another. Some of those things included structural reorganization. Some of those things just included recommendations for new programs or changes to existing programs. And I think collectively we have done our best to chip off a lot of those things. So over the last couple of years, Missoula in Motion's had a few staff turnover occurrences, And we're kind of looking for some direction on what our next steps should be in our program and how we can improve our services and programs and efficiencies. So what I'm proposing is to utilize these planning funds to hire a third-party consultant who has done a lot of facilitated strategic planning for nonprofits in Missoula. We received two proposals and have chosen the one that we felt was the best fit for our needs. And we've included a copy of that proposal. The whole process would probably take somewhere between 4 and 5 months. It will result in a document that gives us some strategic planning goals and metrics and recommendations on improvements we can make, as well as some potential changes to how our staffing resources are divided. So this plan would focus just on these 2 programs, but we would, part of it would include some in-depth interviews with a lot of our partners. So we would set up some interviews with some of the folks that are here today that also provide TDM services and whom we coordinate very closely. So that's it in a nutshell, and what we are asking is for approval of amendment number 1 to the UPWP for this effort.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Eldridge.
So on the summary sheet, it says that the timeline is November 2017. Is it already started then?
Oh, we should have updated that. It's actually, that was what she had submitted when we sought the proposals back in November, but the contract would start in February or late January and then go through the beginning of summer.
Thanks. Additional questions or discussion? Okay, I'd entertain a motion on the plan, the UPWP update. Mayor Engen.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taves. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, no. Okay, that motion passes.
Great,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next several items are informational. The first is a Russell Street committee to discuss construction-related changes. And Shane, are you introducing this?
Yep. Just do a brief discussion on that. So recently, I think it was in December, the contractor that's building the Russell Street project had proposed some changes to the plan that would potentially save some money, but also changes would have changed some of the aesthetic treatments on the job and potentially could have made maintenance a little bit more difficult. And so MDT received that proposal from the contractor, and we're in a situation at that point of having to make some decisions on I guess, items in the contract that would potentially impact funding for the Russell Street project. And knowing that the MPO really has control over the funding, we thought a little bit about how we should maybe move forward with decisions on that project. And I was looking around the room when I got here, and I was thinking back to Brook South Russell. And I don't know how many of you were on one of these boards when Brook South Russell was being constructed, but it seemed like every other month there was a discussion about why are we spending X amount of money on a certain item, and so really, I guess in my mind, I know it's going to be a challenge as we move forward with Russell Street and the development of that project and construction of that project. And knowing how tight money is for the MPO, I wanted to make sure that, and MDT wanted to make sure that the MPO is included in that process of making decisions. So what we had proposed is having a few members of the TPCC be on a committee that essentially will meet every week, and as changes that are proposed or anything that impacts the cost of that project significantly, that group will be informed and be able to make decisions. Having 3 of the members of the TPCC on that committee is nice because when That has to be approved later by TPCC, funding-wise. 3 of those members will have a good understanding of why those decisions were made. So right now we've got Jordan Hess and Dave Strohmeyer and Ed Taves are the voting members on that board that are or on that committee that are members of TPCC. So we had our first meeting this morning. We plan to meet every Tuesday as necessary. If it's not necessary, that meeting gets canceled, but we do plan to make sure and meet at least once a month. And that's just to inform the group of the status of the project. The project manager really wants to keep track of the expenditures to make sure that we're not overspending, and if he does foresee problems as far as some overruns, that this group will know well in advance of having to make a decision. Because I can tell you, when Brooks South Russell was happening, my recollection was the money was expended, and then we had to come back to TPCC and have the decision of, hey, do we approve this money to be spent? Well, we've already paid the contractor. You're beyond making the approval at that point. So hopefully with this, at least some of the members in TPCC are a part of that decision early on. They are public meetings. You all are welcome to attend. We are meeting Tuesdays at 8 a.m. In this building here. We've got right now MRA's conference room. If we need to move to a larger location, we will. So any questions on that?
Can I just add a couple
go ahead.
things? So Shane and I had talked about how this process interfaces with the MPO's public participation regulations. And so the public participation plan has, when we revised it in 2015, we tried to introduce a little bit more flexibility. So as you recall, you've seen the TPCC, I can send an email that says we are proposing a change, and we can do kind of an email vote. That's for changes, money changes that are less than 10% of the cost. So that is something that we can utilize as part of this process to try to keep decision making moving forward as quickly as possible. If there's something that comes up that kind of trips that threshold and would require a full-blown amendment and noticing, that is something that we can either schedule a special meeting for if necessary. Hopefully we won't have to do that very often, or like Shane said, perhaps we do it after the fact, although that wouldn't technically meet our public participation requirements, I don't believe. But having this decision team in place at least gets the ball rolling and keeps the decision making going a little bit more quickly. But we'll be trying to meet our public participation plan regulations with this.
And keep in mind, TPCC still has the overall decision making as far as funding with the MPO. That doesn't change. It's just that project decisions on this project include 3 members of TPCC, so that TPCC is pretty informed about what's going on the project and why the decisions are being made. So.
And we will publicly notice these meetings too.
And can you describe, will that be through SIRE, or kind of through our standard agenda process, or how will the notice be?
I believe so. I haven't talked to the city clerk yet about it, but at the very least it will go in the Missoulian along with all of the other meeting notices, so at least there is a notice that a meeting will be happening. To the extent that there are agendas that we could post on SIRE, we could do that as well, but we haven't really talked about whether or not an agenda is going to be part of this or not.
Okay. One thing that comes to mind for city council is that we oftentimes will use our city council comment times to alert the council and the community of things that are coming up, and this is conveniently about 12 hours before, city council meetings conveniently about 12 hours before one of these meetings, so I'll just make a habit of using that as a communication tool as well. Mr. Weiss?
Throughout the design process of Russell, there was a technical design committee, is that what TDC stood for, that made a lot of decisions about project elements. Is there a chance that this new committee could undo some of the decisions that were made there if costs rise or something?
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get this group together. And really, the city's represented. Kevin Slovarp is there, and he was part of the TDC, those discussions. So that's the intent, is to make sure that the decisions that were made by TDC are considered from this group, and part of that is having the folks that were involved in those TDC discussions as a part of that group, and Jordan was a part of that too. So,
Mr. Aldrich.
Since the Russell Street project uses a lot of the STP funds, which transit is also eligible for, I would suggest having a representative from the transportation district on that committee.
Mr. Stack?
I would say you're welcome to attend. I don't know that I want to change the committee members or add, but you are always welcome to attend. They're public, and I'm sure the folks that are members of the TPCC will consider comments of the MUTD.
Yeah, and just by way of background, I think the structure was really designed to mirror the decision team that Ben mentioned. But as a matter of practice, I think it will be very inclusive and probably be very consensus driven. So I'd encourage you or someone from Mountain Line to participate. Anything further on this? Is there any public comment? Okay.
I just have one other thing to add, and maybe Shane can elaborate a little bit, but MDT has hired a public relations firm for the Russell Street project, Big Sky, and so they're going to be just very similar to the Madison Street project, I believe, putting out public information on a timely basis about the project in general. So there will be a lot of good public outreach as things start to go under construction.
Yeah, I can add to that. We have hired Big Sky Communications to not only send out the message for Russell Street, but they're also on board for Van Buren as that's moving forward. The Huson or Frenchtown Frontage Road project, and then the CMAC ADA, the Missoula Downtown ADA upgrade. So you should see quite a few, I guess, public notices and brochures and things of that nature out as a part of their activity. So,
okay, thanks. Without anything further, we can move on then. Jessica, do you want to introduce both of our next presenters, starting with the Airport Authority?
Sure. So Brian Elistad with the airport came to me last month and suggested that he give you guys an update about what the airport is working on and what their future plans are. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this joint meeting today, was to try to get everybody in a room together that would have an interest in what the airport is up to, and help be efficient with his time as well. So I'm going to turn it over to him, and then following that, we have John Schick from HDR, who has been working with MRA and Mountain Line and others to do a transit-oriented development corridor study for the Brook Street project. So John is going to provide us with an update of that project as well.
Thank you. I'm Brian Elson. I'm the Deputy Director at the airport. Move over here. Thank you for your time. I also want to acknowledge Shane is our board chair currently, and Dory is here as well. So, anything that, we do have a tie-in along with myself as a non-voting member on the TTAC. So, but we just wanted to kind of walk you through, and I'll go probably through this fairly fast to save some time for questions if you have any, and more so spend time on the phasing plan at the end, because that's really what you and our customers at the airport are going to have to live through as we go through this construction project. So, why do we need a new facility? It was originally built in 1948. It's been modified or added on to 11 times. In the world of IT, if we try and pull cable from one end of the building to the other, we have a lot of problems. It's very hard to interconnect the building. We've had a lot of growth in the last, just since 2000, we've increased 68%. So, And we expect another record year this year and the following year. So looking forward, there's going to be a lot of good things happening at the airport. And if you've ever flown out in July on a Saturday or any day during the week in midday, I don't know where you're seating. We have a lot of people that just have to sit on the floor. It just the hold rooms just are not big enough. I mean, they were designed, for DC-3s. Now we have 737s, 160-seat airplane. You may have 4 of them on the ground all at one time. So as people come visit our community, it's not the greatest first impression from time to time, seeing, where do I sit? Where do I get food? All our concessions were pre-9/11, so you have this little coffee shop that does a lot of great things, but we need a restaurant post-security. So when we went out, we were tasked with some guiding principles. So we want to design it for the users. We want you to come in. Right now you walk in the building and you can't even see where the ticket counters are if you come in the middle front entrance. You have no idea where Delta or Alaska is if walking in the doors. You'll see later on, we want to make sure that it's expandable. We are not going to overbuild to start, but we want to make sure that we can add on to in little chunks as we grow. And we just want to be a good front door for Missoula. Kind of take you why we're doing what we're doing. So we are kind of landlocked. We have a lot of acreage out at the airport, but we have Highway 10 to our north. We have Minuteman Aviation on both sides of us, so we don't want to impinge on their ability to do a great business. And then we have a very good sized aircraft apron, but we don't want to spend money to recreate that. So we're kind of stuck there in that blue line that's off to the right of the screen there. I mean, that's kind of the building restriction line, height restriction line. So we kind of have that on one side of us, and then we have the aircraft ramp to the south side of us. So we're kind of penned in on where we're at, so we kind of need to make decisions for the best use of our land. So back in 13, and then we updated in 16, those 4 panels are kind of where we started at. Panel A up in the upper left-hand corner is if we just did a remodel. So you probably in the news heard, a $45 million remodel. If we were to do that plan, there was just no way to grow. We build that, we're done. There's no way to go any further. So we started to update our master plan in 2016 to look at different options. So within our site constraints, there's that B, C, and D that we kind of looked at of how we could grow and add on to as kind of that guiding principle that we used. So ultimately, based on our the usable land without having to redo our ramp area and our de-ice ramp, we came up with kind of a 2-wing, a double loaded pier to the south and then a single loaded, we call it pier to the east, where we could just kind of add on to as needed. I mean, in our lifetimes, we're not going to get at 20 gates, but we have the ability to get there. So that's where we came up with our preferred alternative, kind of lay it over our current terminal so that we don't impinge on Minuteman or, and we need our parking lots to the north there. So that kind of gets us to what we need today is about 8 gates is where we're going forward with. So then we went into design, and I'm speeding through this because I just want to make sure that we have time for question and answers later. But so we kind of started with a clean slate of, okay, what do we want? So this is just actually our basement. And it's way too small, and I'm happy to stay around afterward. But the goal of this was we wanted to get our delivery trucks off the curb. So this has a loading dock off to the west end of the building so that we're not taking up valuable frontage with all the deliveries, food deliveries that we would have in the terminal. Because there's certain times of day where Liquid Planet comes in, and that's a pretty valuable frontage curb for our drop-off and pick-up passengers. So this was to get our deliveries sent to the basement where they could get screened, and then elevators straight up after everything's been screened up to where we need them. Our first floor, what you would see from the street level, obviously you've seen this in the blueprints there. Ticketing as you drive up on left side of the building and baggage claim to the right side of the building as if you were standing in the building. And then right now, when you check your bag at the ticket counter, you have to check your bag, grab it, carry it over, and plop it down on the screening machine. So this would get the bag handling part of it. So you would just come to the counter, the ticket agent would tag your bags, put it on the belt, and you wouldn't see that again. So that is to get that out of the public's view. And then the rest of it is support in the back for ground equipment and airline ticket offices. Screening would be upstairs versus it's downstairs today. So you would take escalators, you check in at the counter, and those escalators are at the top of the screen there that deliver you upstairs, one up from the ticket counter, and then for arriving passengers down to baggage claim area. Screening, right now we have 2 screening lines. We've been fighting for 3, but this is designed for 4 with the ability to add 5 down the road. Get through concessions or get through screening. Concessions would be right there. So I post security, restaurant and bar. So if you want to, nowadays, if I'm a ticket passengers, my goal is to get through screening and relax and make sure I'm at my gate. So this gives our customers a little more selection than we have today. Our outdoor deck has been pretty popular, so we've incorporated that into design. So where you can order directly from the restaurant bar and take it out onto the deck. And then hold rooms that are actually designed for the 737-800s, are, the biggest aircraft that we currently have today, and could handle Airbus 321s, which is like a 221 passengers. And then this is where we have also one thing that we missed from the good old days is when you're a passenger or a customer or a person picking up your loved one, there's no place to see airplanes land. So this is to give an observation deck that you can actually look out over the airfield. So that'd be on the 2nd level along with some administrative support offices up there as well. But our goal is to kind of give customers a little more so you can actually see people arrive and depart, a viewing area per se. Now the fun part, kind of some pictures that the architects have come up with, but obviously we want to make it more glass, more visual, so when you're standing in the parking lot and looking toward the airport, you can kind of look through and you kind of see where the ticket counter is and where you can see where baggage claim is. I'm trying to, we're not at this stage yet where we're picking out, the interior, the wood, or interior furnishings, but this is just this one look of where architects are kind of thinking that we should head toward. Chris Martison from A&E is the one doing these drawings for us. But you can see it's a lot more natural light is what we're kind of going for right now. And the night will be looking great from the interstate with the lights at night with the lights on. Just more architectural renderings. Glass, restaurant. This was the observation area on the 2nd floor, so you can actually look out onto the airfield. More hold room space. And again, we're not at the point where we're picking out furnishings yet, but just kind of what committees have kind of looked at. The sunshade there is, we are worried about operational things where the agents working the ticket counters at 6 in the morning. We don't want glare as they're trying to work on the computer, so we're trying to incorporate some sunshades to kind of keep cool and keep line of sight sun. But again, lots of windows. So this is kind of where I wanted to spend a little more time, is kind of so everybody kind of knows what to expect. So we are building on our current site, and we have to stay operational as we're doing this. So right now we've taken to our board a plan to start to design a new screening area. So right now, the current, as you enter the airport, the building off to your right or west as you're entering the airport, that's our current screening area. So you go through screening, and then you have to climb a set of stairs to go to your boarding gate. And if you're going to Alaska, then you go up a stairs and you go back down the stairs. So our plan is going to be to relocate the screening area, and at the time we want to, since we only have 2 lanes in there right now, we'd like to design it for 3, and put it in the middle of the building, right where that, I'll say our big bear is, in the middle of the terminal, and turn that into our screening area. And then we would demolish the current screening area, and that's kind of the basis where we would start rebuilding. And our thoughts are with moving the screening to the middle of the room, to the middle of the building, we actually think that our customer experience will be better. So now we can turn our restaurant into a post-security restaurant. If you're Alaska Airlines, you'll go through screening and you won't have to climb a set of stairs, or you have a restaurant right there. So a little more customer amenities. And that's where I'm saying on the second phase, as we have a label there, so that white block would be new ticket counters, 4 new gates, screening, and some airline behind the scenes ticket counters, along with the baggage sorting area. So once that's open, we flip a switch, we move into that, and then we demolish the middle of the building, and we create a walkway, and we keep our current baggage claim area intact. So when people arrive on those 4 gates, they would go down the escalator, which was in that earlier pictorial, and have to go down the walkway to the current baggage claim area. And then we would build the new baggage claim, 4 more gates, and then we would demolish the current baggage claim area. So phase 1 through whatever you want to call it is 8 gates. Currently right now we have 3 jet bridges plus 2 ground boarding gates. So this would be potentially 8 full hold rooms. And then it's just easy to expand. We can, 1 wing we can do ticketing, 1 wing we can do the baggage claim, or we can expand more gates on one of the piers, or we can add it to, there was 2 piers that we can actually add gates to kind of ultimately get to our full build out. And this will take a number of years. Right now for design, we went to design for relocating the TSA checkpoint. So that's currently under design. That will probably be started, removed probably September through the end of the year, whether it's September or January. So let's say 3rd or 4th quarter of next year. And then beginning of 19, we would start full design of this terminal, and then break ground 2020, somewhere in that range if I have my dates right. The good thing is here, I'm not asking you for any money today. We are self-supported, no local tax revenues are used for this project. But to pay for it, it's FAA grants. Please come out and use the terminal. It's user fee, so that $4.50 that when you buy a ticket, that goes toward this project, or a quarter of every coffee that you come out to the airport and pay, or if you take a Uber and Lyft, we get $1 for that. So but the big thing is there's no local property taxes that go into this. It's all user fees. So I sped through this, but I just want to make sure there was time for lots of questions if you guys had any.
Thank you. That's great. Questions? Mr. Weiss?
Thanks for this, Brian. I've seen like various articles in the paper and stuff, and it's really great to get a good overview of the project. Do this what you will. I just wanted to share experiences of my friends and family that fly in. They love landing in the current terminal. That the wood beams and supports it's something that they comment on frequently. That they love some of the architectural features of the current terminal. So any chance to retain those, I know, is appreciated by some of our visitors.
No, I would agree. I mean, you kind of saw in the pictures, there was a lot of, Missoula's got wood history, so I mean, I would assume our board will give us guidance to kind of go down that route, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
Can you talk about the phasing and timeline for sort of the external circulation design, parking, bus stops, that kind of thing?
Currently, we're under design for, so as you come in the terminal, our plan is for you to take an immediate right or head west and expand what we call the terminal area loop road, access road. So we'd be set up, and so as you come around, you'd be coming around for the new terminal. So that will be under construction. So this is 28, so it could be as early as this fall, or I would guess more so early 2019 would be my guess by the time we get it out for bids.
Okay, thanks. Just a comment, I guess. Chris mentioned this at the City Club presentation, that there's a single BMW in the parking lot in the renderings, and there's a lot of taxis up there. And as a transportation body, we are endeavoring to change our mode split, get more people carpooling on probably not going to bike to the airport, but I would encourage you to give strong consideration to transit stops and Uber and Lyft and taxi and those types of modes as you move forward.
Absolutely. We've had those early discussions.
Great.
And when you say nobody will bike to the airport, I think this, the city, the county, I mean, it's natural growth is going to move out toward us anyway, so there'll be more and more of that down the road.
Great, thanks. Mr. Weiss?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that a little bit too, is that I've actually done a little bit of work with Brian to try and facilitate bike lockers out at the airport because I receive requests from people to improve bike parking out there because people do want to bike to and from the airport. And airports in bigger cities have done things like set up workstations so that if you fly with your bike in a box, you can assemble it in the airport and then ride away from there. And so I think there are some TSA hurdles that we need to consider, but it's something that we will be hopefully working on as this moves forward.
Great. Any further questions, or Commissioner?
So did I hear you mention there will be a couple ground loading gates, or currently you board Alaska on the ground, so I'm assuming there's some means to get from the second floor back down to the ground?
So the answer is yes. As we go through this process, and I mean, Alaska, their fleet's going to change by the time this building opens up. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a different aircraft type by the time we actually open up this building. But regardless, that's single load pier that I was trying to talk about. That's kind of the area where we're kind of toying with, in the summertime, do we need every hold room to have a jet bridge, or is it going to be acceptable to do some ground boarding in the summertime when we go from 12 operations in the wintertime to 25, 30? It's trying to build this building in a sense that we can easily shift from season to season or close down certain, so we're not heating and cooling the whole building. So the short answer is yes, we plan on I think we're planning on having some ground boarding, but we're not that far down the design yet.
Thanks. Anything further from the committee? Okay. Is there any public comment? All right. Well, thank you so much. This is very informative, and excited for the progress. So we'll move on to our final presentation, which is the Brook Street Corridor Transit-Oriented Development Infrastructure Study. And Mr. Schick will present that item.
I'll just take a minute to load this presentation. Speed ports. Okay, well, thank you for providing me the opportunity to present here. I appreciate your time. I'm John Schick. I work with HDR Engineering here in Missoula. We are the team leading, the consulting team leading this project, the Brook Street Transit-Oriented Development Infrastructure Study. I just wanted to provide a project status update and just kind of walk through the various elements of the study, provide some graphics and just a timeline, and just provide some time for folks to ask questions and just to generally get a sense of where the project is at. I know there's multiple agencies funding this study, and most of you are familiar probably with the background of the study, certainly familiar with the study area. I just want to touch on some past Midtown planning initiatives that had occurred. 2003, the Midtown Missoula report was published. Years later, the URD 3 needs assessment report in 2011. The Brook Street Corridor Plan as more design level reserved to Dixon in 2014. Kind of in the interim then, the Midtown Mojo Group was formed, and just a couple years ago, the Brook Street Corridor Study was published. That was the new Mobility West Community Builders Grant Initiative, and that study in particular, kind of laid the background for kind of the next phase to do, more infrastructure-related specific design recommendations. So just touching on, a few of the design recommendations that were published in the 2016 corridor study. Improving pedestrian crossings was a priority. Vacating short streets along Brook Street. Complete missing bicycle linkages. Transit improvements. Break up mega blocks, improvements at the Mid-Brook Street area. And then they recommended a lane reduction between Stevens and Mount Avenue. And so a lot of these concepts have been incorporated in our work thus far. Now, the study itself, we've broken into multiple discrete tasks. And so kind of with this presentation, I wanted to step through, these various elements, provide some of the background and kind of steps and analyses that are occurring within these individual tasks. So they're broken into a task 200 as our scope of work is developed. The transportation and safety analysis task. There's a task 300, the transit analysis. There's a task 400, development density. This is just looking at existing and recommended densities to support TOD. The task 500 is kind of the primary infrastructure design plan. Task 600, a regulatory and land use changes component. There will be a final report, not yet underway. And then a phase 2 that takes the concepts, moves them more into kind of a plan form, 15 to 30% roughly design. We're able to then develop quantities and costs and provide that information. So there's a lot of ongoing planning projects in the city, and this project needs to coordinate with those. In particular, we've had some past coordination meetings with the City of Missoula Design Excellence Project that's currently underway. Also underway is the Missoula Urban Transportation District Long Range Strategic Plan. There's obviously a lot of work going on at Southgate Mall with the renovations there, and so this project is trying to kind of coordinate efforts and ensure that there's consistency. And also with recent planning projects, kind of more regional planning projects, again, the Brook Street Corridor Study, the Long Range Transportation Plan recently published, the MPO Bike Facilities Master Plan has got a lot of recommendations that interface with the Brooks Corridor and recommendations that directly affect what's going on with this project. And then again, the mall long range plan has got some kind of long-term implications on how the corridor will develop. And I'm just going to kind of step through again these various tasks, and feel free to just chime in and ask me questions as we go, or I'll certainly leave time at the end for that. The transportation analysis, this is kind of the technical backbone of the study, looking at the existing and forecast traffic conditions. So using a synchro traffic model for the corridor, we've updated that model with 2017 turning movements. We collected AM and PM peak movements using mile-vision cameras last year, 2017, and we have developed forecasts for the 2 horizon years, 2025 and 2045, so looking at existing and projected conditions in the corridor. This component of this study, the TAS 200, involved a crash analysis, so we did a 10-year analysis of the corridor, looking at trends and causes and such. And then the modeling of improvement concepts, so that those sub-bullets are some of the larger kind of roadway reconfiguration and concepts that are being examined and evaluated with this study. Looking at the signalization, new signal at Brooks, McDonald, and Schilling. We're evaluating the lane reduction on Brook Street between Stevens and Mount Avenue. Looking at various ideas and strategies for transit priority. Pedestrian crossings, that's a key piece and constraint within the study area, and looking at where and how pedestrians can safely move across the corridor. And then access modifications. So I just wanted to look at a few graphics. This is existing roadway and traffic conditions. This just shows existing levels of service through the corridor here. And I didn't have a study area map previously, and it dawned on me that was probably a good idea to include earlier. But you can see kind of this darker gray area here, and this is roughly the study area. It's from Mount Avenue to Reserve Street, encompasses approximately a quarter-mile radius in each direction. And so what we're looking at here is existing levels of service and the existing intersection controls. There's 10 intersections that are being evaluated in some level of detail with this study. All are signalized presently, except for the stop-controlled intersection at Schilling and McDonald. And overall, you can see that relatively good and acceptable levels of service. Obviously, the Reserve, Brooks experiences some levels of congestion in AM and PM. And on the segment here, we've got the ADT values posted here. And north of Stevens here, you can see a dramatic reduction in ADT, and that provides opportunity for examining that three-lane reduction. This graphic kind of underneath here is just a key piece that is kind of an underlying constraint for the entire corridor. You can see the dramatic right-of-way shifts, and this is just a graphical depiction here, showing that from Reserve to Paxson, essentially in our project area, we've got adequate right-of-way, 140 feet roughly, and then it dramatically necks down at Paxson to where the remainder of the corridor is highly constrained at from 65 to 80 feet in right-of-way. Looking at 2045, future no build. This is just if nothing else were done, what with the kind of a given growth rates that we established for the corridor, what would it look like? You see volumes increasing. There are some PM intersections approaching failure. Brooks Reserve, I think the PM probably goes from E to F, and just to demonstrate future no build. And so this graphic is looking at a 2045 condition, having modeled, both a new signal at the Schilling McDonald intersection, as well as looking at the lane reduction here and how it affects, the adjacent intersections. And so, just a graphical depiction again of how the ADT are, and in general the addition of a signal actually proves out to in the synchro model to improve some of the PM conditions in the corridor, but there is no a change in levels of service AM or PM at the signalized intersections in that three-lane scenario at Stevens and Mount. And so again, I'm just kind of passing through these just to show some of the results, and these are all included in technical memoranda that will be appended to a final report. Additional analysis and a graphical representation of looking at Q lengths. We've examined, both AM and PM Q lengths. It's highly directional in the corridor, and these, are valuable to examine in terms of identifying, potential transit priority opportunities, but also in siting and analyzing PED crossings and seeing kind of where these Qs occur. These are just values taken straight from Synchro, but again, nonetheless, just providing kind of a corridor-wide graphical representation of this is peak PM travel in 2025. And looking at the crash analysis, we get a 10-year data drop of crash history here, and so this is kind of mapping out the crash types by intersection and total counts. This corridor did have a couple fatalities in the door area, in the door intersection that was rebuilt in roughly 2016, and so those data points were removed from this crash analysis. But again, just a graphical depiction of corridor-wide intersection crashes and the crash types. And so you can see, high numbers of crashes at the busiest intersections at Reserve, at Russell Street and South. Task 300, the transit analysis. This is looking at existing.
Let's stop for questions
Yeah,
right now.
absolutely.
And move on. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Commissioner Curtis?
So what is the goal of the lane reduction between Mount and Stevens? I mean, why do we feel like we need to cut it down?
Well, it's I don't know the background of the public involvement and why it became a strong recommendation in the study. I mean, the benefits of, you have lower volumes there, and so it provides an opportunity. You can still maintain a level of service that's is currently being experienced with a reduction in lanes. So you go from a four-way to basically two-way, but a center turn lane. And so that frees up roadway space where you can then use it to build bike facilities or enhance pedestrian facilities or on-street parking. It's basically a concept that's been implemented in a lot of instances where in urban areas where they can kind of realize a complete street type build out, and there's other benefits probably in terms of simplifying movements and reducing conflicts and such.
And is Brooks back towards Hellgate High School? Is it only two lanes? You forget when you aren't standing there.
Right, at Mount it becomes two-way.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? Mr. Weiss?
Yeah, just speaking to that, pedestrian safety enhances greatly when you can remove having to cross two lanes at once. And so since pedestrian crossings were one of the desires in this, I think that's one of the motivations for examining that. Federal Highways Administration has said that any four-lane road in an urban area that has fewer than 20,000 cars should be evaluated for a three-lane because of the safety benefits. And so thanks for including that in this analysis. I'm wondering if Synchro has the ability to factor in the Mary connection as a possible diversion of traffic from Brooks at all. I think of Synchro more as a corridor study, so maybe it doesn't, but are you able to account for that in any way, that especially if there was a signal at Marion Reserve in the future, would any traffic, could that change some numbers in the out years on Brooks?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have, I'm not the traffic engineer working on this, so I just have to be upfront. We have current movements because the intersection has been completed, and so the model that we have incorporates that. However, it wasn't open all the way through. But yeah, Synchro, it has some limitations. I would have to get back to you on in terms of kind of the regional draw and what would the effects be? And with any model, obviously continuing to update it based on current conditions just improves its reliability. And so I don't think that there's a lot of through movement traffic, examined in the model. It's really just intersection by intersection.
All right, great. Should we move on to the transit, or the next task?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so transit analysis, this is somewhat of a discrete task, but has implications on the overall concepts being developed. We looked at existing conditions, ridership data, both within the corridor and just regional with all the various routes. Route 7 in particular, looking at various alignment alternatives, bus stops, and so most of you are probably aware that Mountain Line has the mid to long-term goal of routing Route 7 onto Brooks at 15-minute headways, introducing kind of high-frequency, more reliable transit, and that's can be the impetus to spur TOD. And so, looking at other transit priority analysis and concepts, we looked at transit signal priority at the signalized intersections. Concepts such as queue jumps or bat lane, those are business access and transit lanes. The transit component includes an operational analysis looking at corridor travel times for various alternatives being evaluated, looking at the existing traffic signals and seeing if timing adjustments could improve transit efficiency and travel times. And then the bus transfer center is a big piece of this analysis. The Mountain Line and this project is hoping to identify feasible locations for a future bus transfer center. Currently, it's at the mall, and it could stay at the mall. There's possibility it could move somewhere else, and so we're kind of walking through an analysis, doing a multi-criteria evaluation of potential locations. And once we narrow those down and ideally come to a preferred alternative, develop a conceptual diagram of the bus transfer center. And again, the evaluation criteria, just to name a few: the access, egress, available area, parking included, looking at the underlying land ownership, proximity to major trip generators, the operational costs and route impacts. All of those are going to be qualitatively evaluated to kind of weigh various options. In terms of graphics here, this is maybe difficult to see, but just a couple of the Route 7 alignment alternatives that are currently under evaluation. Route 7 it does currently use Stevens Avenue and then heads down to South Avenue, utilizing the Sussex and South couplet here. So one alternative is to kind of stay with that concept. Another is to turn it onto Brooks and keep it onto Brooks. You can see grayed out the existing Route 7 kind of zigs and zags throughout the Brooks corridor. And then kind of the southern end, there's alternatives for the Route 7 alignment. And so this just shows existing bus stops, where those would be maintained, depending on the alternative chosen, and where additional or new bus stops would, be necessary. And then a couple little hatched areas where there are, potential transfer center locations. I just wanted to look at one kind of close-up concept here. This is, the queue, jump, and bat lane concept that we're, evaluating. It's, just an idea, for this segment specifically. This is between Door Lane and Reserve Street. And so what this concept is looking at is, being able to improve bus travel times by introducing a queue jump, which is more or less a dedicated lane where they're able to bypass queued traffic in this through movement. This concept is entirely predicated on a concept of Route 7 remaining on Brooks through this reserve intersection going on to Walmart. But what it is essentially a long right turn lane for vehicles accessing the businesses, so thus the BAT lane, the business access, and it's a dedicated transit lane. And so again, this is a concept that's used elsewhere, to assist in getting beyond congested areas and maintaining reliable travel times for buses. Again, this is concept level, and there's more details to work out, but just kind of identifying what lane widths and what a configuration in the roadway would look like with this concept. This also shows buffered bike lanes in the corridor, starting from Reserve and heading northward into the study area. And not to get too into the details here, but again, just a preliminary concept where we've identified scaled roadway improvements that are currently being vetted amongst the advisory committee. And I don't know if there's any transit specific questions that either I could field, or we certainly have Corey here in the house to assist.
Commissioner Curtis?
Do all those lanes that you were showing there, I know that was an area you showed the wider right-of-way, but those all fit within the existing right-of-way?
Correct.
From door?
Yeah, I mean, essentially this is curb to curb. There's, no curb modifications here. And so there's adequate shoulder width to accommodate a buffered bike lane, in this segment from Reserve to Paxson. So again, taking advantage of that 140-foot roughly right-of-way.
Then I have one follow-up question. So when you were showing the potential transit spots, one of them looks like it's at the fairgrounds. We solicited for input on that location as we were planning for the fairgrounds and didn't get any, so that is not planned in the fairgrounds. So if somebody's thinking they want to do that, we probably should know about it sooner than later, because we're going to be starting to hire people to plan infrastructure and stuff, and that's not in it.
Okay. I mean, Emily Bentley is on our committee, but I would welcome any comment on that.
Ms. Buchanan, do you want to add? Okay. All right. Okay, anything further on the transit piece? Okay, let's move on.
So Task 400 and 600 were led by Leland Consulting Group, and so they are based out of Portland, and they're a land use consulting company. They specialize in TOD implementation, market analysis, and they were valuable to kind of pull together the various components of these tasks. And I think several people in here have seen some of the background information of this. I mean, the development density task was looking at existing densities and how that affects and could support increased ridership. And basically looking at, this is a graphic that they produced looking at our corridor in general. There are several nodes that were identified in the planning study, and so these were used in their analysis to look at existing land uses. And then they examined various reference nodes in the city, downtown, the Brooks and Higgins area, and the Slant Streets area, just to provide a kind of a comparison. And so, they are looking at current ridership and existing and projected densities. And I'll just touch on a few of their maps and graphs and such. The residential density, they mapped that out, looking at, how the corridor relates with this, and identifying that there are low residential densities in the immediate Brooks vicinity at present, low to moderate rooftop densities along the corridor, pushed away from primarily commercial street frontage. Employment density, similarly, this kind of shows an inverse, and that there is a high level and densification of employment in the corridor. In looking at how the jobs sort of drop off as you go, and so this all just kind of feeds into the concept of TOD, where a certain level of jobs and residents, are ideal in supporting TOD infrastructure. This just shows the two kind of mapped together, seeing employment densities, a lot of that downtown, the green rings are employment, kind of scaled employment densities, and then the residential densities are kind of the underlying area here, the orange that doesn't turn out so well on the screen. But so there's when combined the jobs and residences together, make up what they call activity units, which in many TOD studies, are used as kind of a measurement to gauge ridership and to look at those relationships. And so that's what they're attempting to do here. And so just another way of looking at, our corridor nodes here. This just maps out the population per gross acre. Again, with the whole Brooks corridor here, our nodes here, and again, this is our reference nodes here. And so this is just showing, the densities, but it's looking at this reference line here, this minimum for high scoring. It's a preferred transit network number, basically densities of 12 to 15 residents per gross acre were identified, by literature review and in the former Mountain Line Long Range Plan as kind of the ideal density to support, transit and TOD, more generally. And so it's just showing that the corridor doesn't quite hit the threshold for residential density. Looking at this, the same kind of reference line here for jobs per acre, it's a demonstration that the corridor, scores quite well and does have a high density of jobs. That bodes well for kind of a future success in TOD. When compared to the various reference nodes. You can see downtown is a very dense employment area. And this is just a scatter plot of the same information, and basically just showing that, for TOD, in an ideal world, you'd be kind of up in this quadrant here with jobs and residences. So employment densities are kind of the vertical axis, and the residents are the horizontal axis. And just showing that the reference nodes and the proposed TOD nodes exceed the benchmarks in some areas, but neither score high in both residential and employment density. And so just a way to look at existing land uses and really kind of where, focus should be to best meet TOD goals. Looking at some of the multifamily development momentum, again, this is just a snapshot of the multitude of graphs and data they mapped out. This is just showing multifamily development post-2013, where residential permits, have been received for new units, and just kind of demonstrating that, generally all the multifamily development is occurring north of the project area, not necessarily in the project area. And they looked at various developments around town, the two top ones being kind of within the study area, the Southgate Triangle Apartments and the Quinton Apartments. And just looking at, as kind of model developments, denser developments, and they have a whole slew of recommendations for kind of the type of development and various elements that could support TOD in terms of building out the ground floor, having multi-use commercial kind of retail mix and such. They looked at property values in kind of the light of redevelopment, and so this is just a swath of Missoula looking at the value density, the total value of square foot of land. It's kind of a gradation scale here from kind of dark brown being kind of the least expensive land to kind of a darker or a green here. Again, just looking at spatial patterns and such. And this kind of feeds into their analysis, getting into specific nodes in the corridor and areas of redevelopment potential. So looking at these 4 nodes and specifically identifying various vacant parcels or underutilized parcels, based on tax assessment data. And I won't spend much time on these, but this is just a tabular form of that, looking at the various property types and their, the available acreages. So, showing that there is ample land availability for redevelopment and new development within the corridor. And this is just kind of a close-in zoomed view of the Schilling node, looking at the various parcels that are either vacant or underutilized again. Southgate Mall, there's various parcels identified. Washburn area, Holiday Village. And so again, this just kind of feeds into their analysis and some of their recommendations in terms of looking at these nodes, prioritizing which nodes should kind of receive the most focus in the future, and kind of concluding the density and the regulatory piece. They've also looked at, I didn't really touch on it here, but they've looked at existing zoning regulations for Missoula and how it relates to various elements of TOD, and they have a series of recommendations in that regard. So I don't know if there's any questions specifically on those pieces. I know I'm kind of going through these quickly, but stop me if you have any specific questions. The infrastructure design plan, this is again the kind of the more I guess boots on the ground kind of roadway improvements, kind of items that are going to look at kind of more street level details. So what this this piece is looking at evaluating active transportation connections within the study area. We are looking at conceptually identifying proposed improvements for transit, pedestrian, and bicycle facilities, evaluating the bus stop layout and design, and a high-level concept plan for the bus transfer center. So really just taking a lot of the previous results and recommendations and feeding it into kind of an infrastructure improvement plan. Improvements for pedestrians and bicyclists. This is a key piece where the Brooks corridor is sorely lacking. This is sort of just a slide on the approach for improvements, corridor-wide improvements that are interventions that can be applied along the entire length, segment-specific interventions, looking at the various segments here. The project area lends itself to 3 distinct segments: the south segment reserved to Paxson, the central segment, which is Paxson to Reserve, or Paxson to Stevens, excuse me, and then the north segment, the Stevens to Mount. So looking at how to apply specific interventions through those various segments. Spot interventions, just looking at site-specific. Corridor-wide interventions, these are just concepts that are being evaluated, simplifying existing geometries. So this is just a quick graphic here showing how we've got a lot of existing skewed intersections, and the concept of kind of squaring up the intersection to Brooks is one thing that's being evaluated through the corridor. The benefits being improved visibility, slowing speeds of turning vehicles, shortening the crossing distance for pedestrians, and the benefit of adding space for street furnishings, bus stops, etc. The concept of vacating dispensable short street segments. There's a lot of redundant and potentially unnecessary small street segments that could be either removed or reduced to just a private access. But reducing the number of streets could improve just the overall efficiency of the corridor, reducing turning conflicts, and et cetera. And then driveway access management. Again, this isn't an access management plan per se, but elements of it are being kind of incorporated into this study to look at how Brooks can be kind of modified to improve flows for vehicles, pedestrians, both motorized, non-motorized users. This is just, again, a quick slide on the various, the 3 distinct segments. We looked at that at the graphic with the right-of-way graphic earlier. The south segment reserved to Paxson, that allows for bike facilities and improved sidewalks along brooks without rebuilding curbs or right-of-way acquisition. The central segment, this is a constrained, a narrowed down right-of-way. It limits the potential for on-street, like bicycle facilities per se, without rebuilding curbs or right-of-way acquisition. And then the north segment, where the proposed lane reduction frees up space for bike facilities and/or on-street parking. Spot interventions, this is just looking through the corridor, where can we, make some improvements, at existing intersections, adding additional bike ped crossings, and then just looking at innovative or non-traditional interventions that are just opportunistic through the study area. So again,
John, how many slides do we have left?
I'm sorry?
We've got just a couple minutes left, so I just wanted to check where you were on time.
I'm almost done here.
Okay, great.
This is just a quick summary of what the infrastructure plan is looking at. I just wanted to look at a couple of concepts, just to kind of give you a flavor of what we're looking at. And we don't have to spend much time on these, because these are just a concept. This is the intersection of Schilling, McDonald. This is again where a new signal has been modeled. There's a proposal here to add a two-way cycle track. This is primarily to facilitate the east-west movement of a proposed neighborhood greenway. Again, this graphic shows the buffered bike lanes on the street. A street closure here. And again, just to provide kind of a quick snapshot of some of the concepts and the graphics that are just preliminary at this stage. Kent Avenue, here's another example at the Stevens Brooks intersection and the intersection of Kent Avenue. Again, this is, we're taking previous planning efforts and opportunities where the Kent Avenue is again another east-west neighborhood greenway bike facility. And it has been identified in previous efforts to improve the crossing for non-motorized users. And so this concept is just looking at adding a bike facility here, a two-way track to facilitate this east-west movement. How we're looking at existing adjacent properties, and moving parking from one side to the other. This includes a closure of this little short street segment in this vicinity, a realigned intersection, median extension. This also shows the treatment of the three-lane in the vicinity of Stevens, kind of moving towards Mount Avenue. And again, I just was going to touch on schedule. This study is, roughly an 8-month now study, and we're currently at this line here where we've developed various drafts of technical memoranda for these various tasks. We're working on preliminary concepts right now that are being vetted and revised. In the next, month roughly, a final report will include recommendations and append all the technical analyses to it. Roughly in March or so, there's going to be the movement to phase 2, where the costs are developed, technical drawings are developed. Again, this is then the real fun begins on how to pay for or identify funding for these opportunities, and there would be a public meeting sometime after the conclusion of the study. And so that's all I had, and I apologize for going so long, but this is all I could
that's
really
great. It's a lot of good
neck it down
information.
to, really.
In the interest of time, I'm going to take public comment here briefly,
Okay.
and then folks that need to leave at 3 can do so, and then we can, if anyone else wants to linger for a little more discussion, we
Yeah,
can do that.
absolutely.
So is there any public comment on this? Okay. Ms. Gockler.
Thank you. Thank you for all the information. One thing I didn't see was anything in the study related to goals or how we manage stormwater runoff sustainably, how we use trees for air quality, traffic calming, heat sink. Is that any part of this study, or is that coming into the costs? Or
No, not presently. That's not really within the scope. This is a feasibility study, really, and it's going to identify preliminary concepts and they're really at the very preliminary stages. There would certainly be, when things moved into a design phase, then yes, stormwater, drainage, all that would have to be considered. Street furnishings and all that is kind of implied that it would be included in the plan and in whatever rendition of the street reconfigurations occur.
Just as a big impact on design and costs, to be a kind of a second thought after the lines are on the road.
Right.
Okay, like I said, I want to make sure that we're respectful of everyone's time, so if anyone has to leave at 3, we won't be offended. Mr. Weiss.
Kind of related to Donna's question, my understanding is that part of this is to look at a potential future Tiger grant application, and while some of these ideas might be new for us in Missoula, they might not be that radical on a national scale, which is who we'd be competing against. Why the restriction of existing right-of-way when that narrow stretch in the middle, like we don't even have sidewalks on both sides of the road there. There's like basic necessities for transportation that need to be provided in that stretch that will require right-of-way acquisition. Why aren't we looking wider than existing right-of-way?
We discussed this just last week at our last advisory meeting. The right-of-way constraints are significant and a significant hindrance to future expansion of the corridor. That's not to be denied. We, HDR, and kind of at the onset of the project, were tasked with identifying improvements and minimizing impact to right-of-way, trying to do as much as possible within the curb-to-curb or existing right-of-way widths. And that's kind of the short answer. As far as a Tiger grant ask, it really opens it up to a whole nother project. If you're looking at acquiring parcels, there's a lot of buildings that would need to be acquired or removed. And so, I would take the question up with MRA and, if there's a more detailed examination of right-of-way impacts that need to be looked at. But one of the underlying premises of our feasibility study is to minimize right-of-way impacts.
All right, thanks. Any additional comments or discussion on this? I want to thank you for all the work to date. I've enjoyed reviewing the materials as part of the working group, but this is a great introduction, and it's a good piece of business. So. Without anything further, are there any announcements or closing comments? All right. Seeing none, we will be adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.